Bible YouVersion app, Classic Edition, AMPC, Judges 8. And the men of Ephraim said to Gideon, "Why have you treated us like this, not calling us when you went to fight in Midian?" And they quarreled with him furiously. And he said to them, "What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of your big tribe of Ephraim better than the vintage of my little clan of Abiezer? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison with you? Then to anger toward him was abated when he had said that. And Gideon came into Jordan and passed over, he and the 300 men with him, faint yet pursuing. And he said to the men of Succoth, "Give, I pray you, loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are faint, and I am pursuing Zebul and Zalmunna, kings of Midian." And the princes of Succoth said, "Are Zubah and Zalmunna already in your hand? And we should give bread to your family." And Gideon said, "For what, when the Lord has delivered Zubah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will thresh your flesh with the thorns and briars of the wilderness." And he went from there up to Peniel and made the same request. And the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Succoth had done. And Gideon said to the men of Peniel, "When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower." Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Kedar, and their army about 15,000 men, all who were left in the army of the sons of the east. For there had fallen 120,000 men who drew the sword. And Gideon went by the route of those who dwelt in tents east of Nebah and Jebah, and smote their camp unexpectedly, for the army thought itself secure. And Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them and took 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and terrified all the army. Then Gideon, son of Joash, returned to the battle of the Axons of Heres. And he caught a young man of Succoth and inquired of him. And the youth wrote down for him the names of the officials of Succoth and the elders, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, "Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you scoffed at me, saying that Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are faint." And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Peniel and slew the men of the city. Then Gideon said to Zebah and Zalmunna, "That kind of men were they whom they slew at Tabor?" And they replied, "They were like you. Each of them resembled the son of a king." And he said, "They were my brothers, the son of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not slay you." And Gideon said to Jether his firstborn to embarrass them, "Up and slay them." But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a lad. And Zebah and Zalmunna said, "Rise yourself and fall on us, for as the man is, so is his strength." And Gideon rose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent-shaped ornaments that were on the camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Roll over us, you and your son son also, for you have delivered us into the hand of Midian." And Gideon said to them, "I will not roll over you, and my son will not roll over you, and the Lord will roll over you." And Gideon said to them, "Let me make a request of you, every man of you, give me the earnings of his spoil." For the Midianites had gold earnings, because they were Ishmaelites, general term of all descendants of Keturah. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a garment, and every man cast on all it the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings that was requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescents of pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and the chains that were about their camels' necks. And Gideon made an ephod, a sacred high priest's garment, of it, and put it in the city of Ophrah. And all Israel paid homage to it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. Thus was Midian subdued before the Israelites, so that they lifted up their heads no more, and their lands had peace and rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. Jubal, Gideon, son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Now Gideon had 70 sons born to them, and he had many wives. And the concubine who was in Shechem also bore him a son, whom he named Amalek. Gideon, son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash, his father, in Ophrah of his rights. As soon as Gideon was dead, the Israelites turned again and played the harlot after the Baal and his Baal-berith their god. And the Israelites did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hand of their enemies on every side. Neither did they show kindness to the family of Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, in return for all the good which he had done for Israel.